Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup. This week I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Molly Stentz. Wisconsin is central to new felony charges against former President Donald Trump. Neo-Nazis crash a pride event in Watertown. And what's in a name? For some reason, all new buildings in Madison have one. It's Friday, August 4th. I'm Dylan Brogan, and here's what Madison's talking about. News. A weekly review. These are the stories of the Great Friday Roundup. Our mission? To explore significant headlines, to seek out facts, context, and nuance, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And with us today, it's the sheriff of this here podcast. It's Molly Stentz. Hello, Molly.
Did they have a sheriff on that ship? I don't remember that.
Yeah, sure they did.
All right.
Bianca has the week off, just so nobody thinks she disappeared.
She's on assignment.
Whatever that means. Well, let's get into it. Hey, some huge national news happened this week. And Wisconsin, just, of course, our battleground status is forever cemented. We're at the center of it. I'm talking about former President Trump being indicted for the third time, this time for his role in trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election. So you were around when this was all happening, Molly. Remember all the stuff happening after the 2020 election in Wisconsin? It got pretty crazy here for half a minute.
Man, when anyone says, remember when, I just start to feel old. But that wasn't that long ago. 2020, get out of here. Even though we're in the next cycle already. We still can't get over this last presidential cycle.
A lot of people couldn't get over it, and I did a lot of reporting this in the time, and, you know, a lot of what happened is what fueled the conspiracies that Joe Biden did not win Wisconsin. Well, he did. He won by 21,000 votes, but here's how Wisconsin played in this latest indictment having to do with President Trump. Okay, so remember, it was very close in 2020. After things shook out, Joe Biden came out victorious, about 21,000 votes ahead of Donald Trump in Wisconsin. Trump really needed this state in order to win.
Sorry to interrupt, but that is how we roll here in Wisconsin. I mean, we should just say.
Yeah, 21,000 is quite a bit for us.
Statewide races have been close lately, but we don't always see challenges to the election results just because somebody came up short.
Sure, and just so we're clear here, you know, Donald Trump had every right to, it was in his rights to challenge the results, and there's a due process, of course. So he called for a recount in Dane and Milwaukee counties, just those two counties.
We do like recounts in our state.
Yes, we do. So Donald Trump called for a recount in Dane and Milwaukee counties. Those, obviously, a lot of Democratic votes came out of those two counties, the two most populous in the state. What happened? Well, they recounted it in late November. We found out Joe Biden's margin increased by a couple dozen votes or so. So Trump, he's trying to stop Wisconsin from certifying its electors to the Electoral College because it was not looking good for him at the time in pulling off this victory. So he filed lawsuits, one of which made it to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And on December 14th, the court dismissed claims by Trump lawyers that were trying to do something pretty unprecedented, and that was toss over 200,000 votes from Milwaukee and Dane County for rules that applied to the whole state. So right there, it seemed pretty unfair because he was saying, hey, these rules were illegal and these votes shouldn't count. But all the counties that voted for him, he was fine with the rules. But the Supreme Court, by one vote, we should add, they basically said Joe Biden won. We're upholding the election. If you wanted to make claims that the election rules weren't fair, you had plenty of time to do it before. You can't just lose and then say the rules were unfair. All right, so that brings us to what happened with the fake electors, Molly. So after that, Democrats are in the Capitol. So are Republicans. Democrats, they do whatever they do to get their electors to the Electoral College ready to send them to Washington. Well, Republicans met at the same time, and they filled out paperwork claiming Trump won. Even though all these legal challenges had made their way through the courts, we'd done 2 recounts, the 10 Republicans in Wisconsin decided, you know what, just in case we're going to submit our own slate of electors, Electoral College. And it was part of a broader scheme that happened in several states to really sow chaos, because that was really the only way that Trump was going to win, was just by creating a lot of uncertainty. So are you staying with me here, Molly?
Is that the shadow government we keep talking about, we keep hearing about?
No, that's the CIA and the vast bureaucracy called the deep state.
Okay, so not people literally coming up with a parallel system to the government with the idea of trying to change the outcome of a democratic election.
No, those are called cheaters.
Fake electors. Okay, got it.
There was a whole thing involving U.S. Senator Ron Johnson getting texts and trying to deliver this paperwork saying that, hey, Joe Biden didn't win Wisconsin. Look, we have 10 Republicans saying that. They tried to give it to Mike Pence when they were, on January 6th, when they were officially declaring Biden the winner. And of course, we all know what happened January 6th. It's a little disturbing how far people in Wisconsin went to really back up these completely false claims that Donald Trump won Wisconsin. The legal theory they use, Molly, is pretty interesting. Do you want to hear about it?
I was just thinking the links we go to stay in the national news.
Yes. All right. So in Hawaii in 1960, they had an extremely close election between Kennedy and Nixon. The stakes were way different, though, because Kennedy had already won. It didn't really matter. But Hawaii, they were super late. They, it was very close. And by the time the Electoral College they're supposed to submit their votes, they weren't done yet. So what happened was Democrats did something very similar to what Republicans in Wisconsin did. They came up with their own slate of electors and filled out paperwork, and it used some of the same language that these fake Trump electors used in 5 states in 2020. So there was some perhaps illegal precedent here.
So this is a thing?
Democrats were the first to do this. Circumstances were slightly different, though, because it was 1960. Presumably, it took a little bit longer to count things. But by the time they actually did a recount in Hawaii, Kennedy had, in fact, just barely won. And Nixon himself was like, you know what? Those Democrats, their slate of electors is a legitimate one. I think what is different from 1960 is that there was lots of challenges here in Wisconsin. There was 2 recounts. And you know what? Trump didn't win. But that doesn't seem to quell the conspiracy theories, does it?
No. Wow, you went deep. You went deep down this rabbit hole.
I did.
Didn't the Elections Commission have to go, Megan Wolf have to go actually give testimony as to what happened here in Wisconsin? That's part of this whole thing?
They sure did. So Wisconsin is one of 5 states where this kind of scheme was happening. It was Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. In Michigan, they're actually charging those fake electors with crimes. So that hasn't happened in Wisconsin. Attorney General Josh Kaul is staying tight-lipped about it. I'm not sure they'll face any charges, but yeah, good to know. Don't send fake electors. You might be committing a crime.
Good to know. I'm going to write that down so I remember that next time it comes up.
And these are high-ranking officials of the Republican Party who were these fake electors. One of which is was the former head of the Dane County Republicans. He might still be the head. So they got a little bit of egg on their face, I'd say.
So now what?
We're going to have a crazy 2024 election, and basically the only thing Donald Trump's going to do to avoid jail is win. And then we got a Julius Caesar situation, and it's a mess, Molly.
Can we just fast forward to 2025? Can we just skip through this presidential? It's already starting, right? We had the Veep, Vice President Kamala Harris in Wisconsin this week.
Yep, raising money.
Ads are running. It's like we don't get a break from elections. It's just constant election. We couldn't even stop talking about the last one, and now we're already talking about the next one. It's just all election all the time.
That's someone in Sun Prairie who was really big in saying he had all this proof that Joe Biden, in fact, did not win Wisconsin.
Was it at a bar?
No, it was outside of a park, and he had he literally just reams of paper. I spent about 45 minutes just genuinely trying to understand somebody who believed that Donald Trump won Wisconsin, and he had the evidence. I spent 45 minutes by his car trying to hear about it, and the long story short is it didn't make any sense at all. And sometimes it's just hard to give up.
Yeah.
All right, before we get to an equally depressing topic, we're going to take a quick break and hear what Bianca has planned for the weekend.
Madison's home to some pretty fine restaurants, if I do say so myself. The latest addition to my go-to swear-by dinner spots is Mint Mark. It's a stylish restaurant in the Atwood neighborhood. And if you're someone who seeks out exquisite experiences around food, Mint Mark should really be on your list. They have some of the most innovative savory dishes I've had in town, like their cabbage but with miso hollandaise and smoked trout roe. And they have a top-notch bar to match it. I'm always delighted. The food is typically in season and beautifully presented. Not to mention, the decor is peak. That is, if you're interested in being transported to a classy 1920s speakeasy set in the jungle. Hey, just me? I'll also say it's a perfect date spot. If you haven't been, definitely check out Mint Mark. Enjoy the experience. Thank me later. Did you know that financial problems are one of the top 5 reasons people get divorced? Let's face it, finances are stressful and can cause unnecessary headaches and fights, but you don't have to let them bring down the rest of your life. Attorney Z. Usman with Usman Law has helped thousands of people get out of debt, and he wants to help you too. If you're in debt, there may be a less hard option to paying things off. Through federal and state laws, Attorney Usman can help you lower interest, lower payments, and completely zero out certain debts. Let Usman help you take your mind off your bills. Cause hey, ain't nobody got time for all that. Just visit madtownlawyer.com to schedule a free call with Attorney Usman, the finance fixer.
Well, in other news, here in Wisconsin, there was a pride event in Watertown. You know Watertown, right? It's like less than an hour east of here, east of Madison. Place that gave us the first kindergarten in the U.S.
But what have they done for me lately?
They have a nice little farmer's market. They're right on the Rock River. It's kind of pretty.
All right, Watertown, pride event.
Watertown. So what's the big deal? Okay, they had a pride event. Yep, a lot of places do. Well, in Watertown last weekend at the pride event, Nazis showed up, apparently. Like, actual Nazis. Dudes in black with flags with swastikas on them.
Face covered.
About 10 or so.
They were concealing their identity.
Yeah, right. So wearing masks. I guess we're into masks again now. So masks, sunglasses, and bringing swastika flags to a park where people are just trying to celebrate love and families.
What was the name of the event? It was organized by the Unity Project, right?
Yeah. So the Unity Project of Watertown is called Pride in the Park. It was an LGBT pride celebration, like many communities have. Not a new thing. So according to eyewitnesses, the Nazis, these dudes that showed up with these swastika flags, were chanting, "There will be bloodshed, they need to hang, and it's us or the pedophiles." This was a thing that happened. It was all over TV, made the national news. People are divided as to who these people are. You know, of course, a lot of residents are saying they're from out of state. Who knows? We don't know who they are. We don't know what prompted this. I talked to a friend of mine in Watertown, and she's lived there for years and years, and she said this is the first time she can ever recall anything like this happening. She's seen protests, but never actual Nazis. Nazi flags in a park in Watertown. And these people were armed. They were armed. And lest we forget, gay people were rounded up in the concentration camps. That was a very real threat. So that was a thing that happened in Watertown over the weekend and freaked a lot of people out. And people have not stopped talking about it. So I watched the city council meeting in Watertown last week where people still wanted to talk about it. There was a lot going on at that council meeting.
What do you mean?
So sometimes I feel like what happens is when a group is attacked, people realize, like, oh man, this group needs support. You get this swell of support, and people rush to their aid. I mean, a lot of people from Watertown commute to Madison. Like, it's not that far away from Madison here, right? But it was mixed. The people that spoke at all of whom identified as Watertown residents, some of them were essentially blaming the Unity Project of Watertown, saying, well, this group is radical, and that's what happens when you're a radical group. You draw other radical groups. So they were equating a group whose mission is to support LGBT families with Nazis, which that just kind of blew my mind a little bit, like to see those as somehow equivalent. That just, yeah, that was something. Then apparently there was another group. So there was this subgroup, like an additional protest group called Gays Against Groomers.
Oh, they've testified at Madison City Council meetings.
Yeah. They're saying, like, we don't support Nazis and we support gay people, but also we don't support gay people who are grooming children and that are pedophiles, which is like just kind of my brain hurt after hearing all of these things at once.
Trouble in Watertown.
So that was the news. That was the news in Watertown. You ever heard of this happening?
You don't typically see Nazis show up very often, but I think there's definitely a lot of division in this country, and people have been radicalized or people feel emboldened. It's certainly playing out, and I'm not sure we should feel surprised in some ways.
It feels like a new low. I feel like it was years ago, when Nazis marched on Madison, and there was a whole debate at WRT radio and a whole kerfuffle, but I mean, that was a long time ago. So, yeah, it's worrisome.
Yeah, the anti-Nazis trashed the studio.
Yeah. We should say, there, from the videos and the pictures and the news reports that I read, everyone was okay. There was a line of cops standing between the Nazi protesters and the folks that were celebrating at the Pride event. Armed Nazis. This is a new one for me. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but apparently that is a thing we are dealing with here in 2023, here in our own backyard.
Molly, before we wrap this up, let's end on a fun piece that Tone Madison had that everyone should check out, and it's something that I like when journalism has a little bit of fun.
So speaking of fun, something we are not having on this news roundup.
Hey, I had fun learning about the history of Trump's scheme that didn't work. This is in Tone Madison. The piece is called A Definitive Grading of Madison Apartment Building Names. It's by Jesse Robb. I hope I pronounced your last name right, but I really liked it. And it's kind of a fun take on all these buildings that are popping up. It does seem like kind of a new phenomenon. They all have names. For example, the Hub is a huge building downtown, primarily directed at students, but it's called the Hub. Another new one is called the James. Right. So Tone Madison went through and came up with ones that some of these I hadn't even heard of, and they gave them a definitive rating. So we'll put a link in the show notes so you can weigh in too. How on Drake Street, there's something called the Dude Abodes?
No.
Yes, they're just doing Big Lebowski references in these new housing developments.
Okay, that's funny. They gave it a D-. Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I kind of like that movie, but it doesn't seem like you should be naming a building after it.
They might regret it. I mean, where's the carpet? Where's the carpet man?
There's one called the Humbucker, which apparently has something to do with a Fender guitar. So that one got an F.
Yeah, this ranking, I mean, I love it. I got some beef. I'm like, they liked Nexus. Every time I look at that thing, I'm just like, were they trying to build a car dealership? But they were like, we'll just do you one better.
Oh, I keep thinking it's like a data hub, like a store, like one of those things that just has servers in it. That's what it.
The Nexus.
But they gave high praise. Tone Madison did to Ella, which is where Ella's Deli was on East Washington. And the Marlin, I actually kind of like that one. It got a bad rating, but the Marlin was called that because it used to be, this is also on East Wash, it used to be Marlin Lumber. So I thought actually that's a nice little tribute and makes sense.
Yeah, I like that one too.
But I came up with a couple.
Ooh, okay.
So I want an A through F rating while we go through these, Molly, okay? Okay, the balcony. Because all these apartment buildings and condos, they have those little balconies. So the balcony.
D.
D? No, okay, not my Not my best. Okay, the fill up, and it's spelled F-I-L-L-U-P, because a lot of these, especially in East Wash, a lot of these buildings were the former sites of gas stations. The fill up.
That just confused me. I just got lost. F.
Oh, God. All right, I got an F on that one. D and an F. I'm doing terrible.
I'm a tough grader.
The fourscore. That's how long the buildings will take to become affordable.
Ooh, I like that one.
My last one is the swamp, because we're just living in a swamp, folks.
A for accuracy.
Well, let's wrap it up with Molly giving me an A. Molly Stentz, thank you for joining me on this roundup.
It's been a wild one, Dylan Brogan.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. Bianca Martin is your host. We're produced by AKL Moman, Molly Stentz, and me, Dylan Brogan. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. You can also get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who lives in Tiberius Terrace? That's Captain Kirk's middle name, by the way. Full circle. See you back here Monday morning with more news from around the city. Live long and prosper.